Hello, I am Christopher Plum. I'm representing American Military University. I'm interviewing Albert Gator Stricklen on Wednesday, the 4th, 2019. Albert is my uncle. He is my mother's cousin. This interview is being conducted for a Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Please state your full name.
Albert Leon Stricklen.
Date of birth.
November 10, 1941.
What's the highest rank attained?
First Lieutenant Infantry.
What war and conflict did you serve?
Vietnam.
So, how did you join the military?
I was going to college and wasn't doing too good at grades, so I dropped out and knew I would get drafted very quickly. That was in 1964. And so rather than get drafted and not have any choice at all, I knew I wanted to go to OCS, or Officers Candidate School. And in the Army, the only branch that you could go into would be a combat arm. And I chose the infantry. And I felt that if I joined, I might have a better chance of getting into OCS, which I did. And so I joined and went to OCS and got commissioned, and then served with the 9th Infantry Division.
How was OCS school, and what was your experience?
Infantry OCS in those days was pretty rough. One of the main objects of OCS in those days was to bust out anybody that wasn't tough enough to withstand and still be able to make fairly good decisions under extremely trying conditions, such as lack of sleep, being harassed all the time. They did everything they could do to bust you out. And they busted out, I don't remember the specific percentage, but about half of the people that applied got busted out, because you had to really be tough in those days to make it through OCS, because they wanted to simulate combat conditions and stress conditions as much as they could and see if you could still operate. And so that was the philosophy of it. In other words, you never did get a lot of sleep. They were on you all the time. I did 280 push-ups one time for a bite of food, but that's just the way it was in those days. But I've got to say that paid off, because I knew some guys that busted out of OCS, and if they had been in a combat position, they'd probably gotten a bunch of people killed. Yeah.
After OCS, were you attached to the 9th Infantry?
Yes, it was interesting. When I was in OCS, we graduated in January of 1966. So we were class number 1-66, first class of the year. There were 6 of us. These 6 guys on the wall over there were assigned to the 9th Infantry Division out of a class of about 150 or so. And we did not know it, but the 9th Infantry Division at that time only existed on paper. It was not an established Army division. It had been during World War II, but they reactivated it. And when we got it was to be stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, where that was the 5th Army headquarters for the United States. And we were going to train there. And at that time, the 1st Infantry Division was training at Fort Riley, Kansas. And then they shipped out to go to Vietnam. And so we came in after they had left. And there was nobody there except a commanding general and a full colonel, which was subsequently became a general, but it was Colonel Maurice Kendall. and he was the commander of the 1st Brigade, and those 6 second lieutenants that we had been commissioned for a week became the first officers in the 1st Brigade. We were the first officers in the 9th Infantry. So that's what it was when we got there.
When did you get activated to Vietnam?
Well, what happened, it took us a year. The division was activated, and we got the troops in. They'd been in the Army for 3 days. Most of them were still in civilian clothes, and some of them, they hadn't had all their shots or anything. And we trained those troops for almost a full year and took them to Vietnam. It was an experiment that the Army was doing at that time. They thought that combat units would be more effective if the troops were assigned to that unit right straight out of civilian life, and the same officers trained them that took them into combat. And we were an experimental unit in that sense of the word, and I think that's the only division that ever trained that way. But we took the troops that we went into combat with were the same troops that had been in the Army for 3 days when we first got them. And I don't think it worked too well.
When was the first time you witnessed combat or seen combat in Vietnam?
When I first night, well, first day I was there. If you get right down to it, we landed in we were the last unit to go over as a unit. We went. I was on the. I guess it would call the USS Ranger. It was a troop ship. No, I'm sorry. The USS Ranger and the General Alexander M. Patch were the 2 troop ships that we were on, and I was on the Patch. And we left Oakland Army Terminal. I think there was about 3,000 infantry on our ship. And when we went under the Golden Gate Bridge, about 2,500 of them were sicker than a dog. They all got seasick, but that meant that we could eat all the food we could hold, the ones of us that weren't seasick. Anyway, it took us, if I remember correctly, about 19 days to go across the Pacific. And we landed in Vung Tau, which was along the southeast coast of Vietnam, and were transported on what we call US 1. It was the only highway that was opened from Vung Tau to Bearcat, which was the 9th Infantry Division's home base. And we did not actually, in one sense of the word, we might have witnessed a little combat, but we weren't actually in it. What I mean by that is the road was a highway, but it was being held open and passable by the Australian troops. And the Australians were holding it open, and our convoy would pass through, and the Australians would come in right behind us and get in there first. And we kept hearing this zill, zing, yow. And it turned out it was people shooting at us. And they didn't hit them. And then the Navy had those big old Sky Raiders, which were basically lightweight bombers, but they're fighter plane bombers. And you would see them off to the side of the road, up in the air, of course. And all of a sudden, they'd start diving on these different positions that somebody on the ground was radioing them, telling them that they were taking fire from a certain area, and they would drop in and machine gun the hell out of them. And so that was the first time I ever saw any bullets fired in anger, so to speak, or in combat. But we weren't personally in combat. But it was the first actual combat I was ever in was on ambush patrols. I led a patrol out to a particular little river, and we took us half the night to get there. It was all at night, and threw a bunch of damn rice paddies up to a river and everything. We laid there on the side up over this little river bank, and about dawn, some Viet Cong came through and we ambushed them. But that, and then the worst I was ever in is when I got pinned down by the machine gun. But you want me to tell you about that? Or?
How did you earn your Bronze Star?
Meritorious service, they said. I did not, just doing a good job. It did not have a V for valor attachment to it. In other words, I didn't jump out there like Rambo and kill 75 people or anything like that with a stick pin, but which he does in the movies. Doesn't work that way in real life. But just basically doing a good job on ambushes and whatever else I was assigned to do. It just awarded a Bronze Star.
What was your worst experience on combat patrols?
My worst?
Yeah.
When I was pinned down by that damn machine gun. We had we were dropped in. Our intelligence service had said there was a Viet Cong platoon or something up on this particular hill, and this is a jungle. It's in the damn jungle. And so I had 2 platoons, and I was a senior officer, and we were to go in there and to kill or capture that Viet Cong platoon. And we were supposed to have some armored support, but the jungle was so damn thick that the armor couldn't really get through it well enough to do any good, and they got hung up 150, 200, 300 meters behind us, and I was ordered to go ahead, and so we took the 2 platoons, and I put 1 platoon in a blocking position, and my platoon was going to be the attack platoon, and we went up the damn hill, and my machine gunner, old boy by the name of Brian Cox from Georgia, was out in front. He came back and he said, "Lieutenant Strick," he said, "there's Viet Cong are there." I said, "Well, let's go get them." And so we spread out in a attack formation and started up the hill. Well, unfortunately, somebody in intelligence had gotten it wrong. It wasn't a platoon that was up there. It was a damn Viet Cong company. And they were dug in, and of course, anytime you're attacking something, you want at least twice as many troops attacking as you have defending. Well, they had twice as many defending, or more, than we had attacking, and they shot the hell out of us. And I happened to be going forward, and machine gun or so opened up on me, and hell, he wasn't 10 feet away from me, I don't think. And the only reason he couldn't kill me, I fell down behind a tree and was laying there, and I'd raise up my head a little bit, and the bark would fly off the tree and was hitting me in the face. And I knew I was dead, and I was trying to get a grenade off my chest to just throw at him. Hell, he was, and the only reason he couldn't kill me is I was so close to him, and he was dug in, that he couldn't depress the barrel. He had a little berm right there where he was shooting at, and he couldn't depress the barrel far enough to hit me. I was so damn close to him. And I don't know why or how or whatever, but I do know this, that I either said it to myself or shouted it or something. I don't even know why I did it. I just said, "God, let me live 5 minutes." I don't know why I asked for 5 minutes and not 5 years, or get me out of here or something, and a voice came to me and said, "Move." And I jumped up in front of that damn machine gun and started running to the side. And all of a sudden I was flying through the air, and I hit a tree with my ribs, kind of like a cross body block in football, and hit the ground. And I hit the ground on my back. I can remember that. And looking up through the trees, it was just smoke and everything, and I guess I was stunned and everything. And I thought, damn, I tripped over a root and the explosion and everything. I thought, that was a big damn grenade too, went off. Well, as I got up, the gun had quit firing. I don't know what happened to him. He must have got killed or something. And there was a damn hole right there where I've been laying. I mean, behind that tree. Either a mortar round or artillery round had hit that hole. And I had a machine gunner and an assistant gunner over to the side there. And I hollered, "Cox, are you all right?" And he said, "No, sir, they've killed me." And Applegate, "How about you?" He said, "No, my legs." He said, my legs are all shot up. A shrapnel hit them. And so I told them to try to get off the hill the best way they could. And they got off the hill, but Cox didn't bring his damn gun. So I had to go back up there and get it. And I knew I was going to get killed then, but apparently the Viet Cong had pulled out. They pulled out then because nobody fired at me. And I got off, and I don't remember specifically, but I know Lieutenant Randy Jackson was my other platoon leader. He's out of Colorado, and we talk all the time. A lot of times we talk. And he said when I came off that hill, I was bleeding out of everything, my eyes, my nose, my ears, and I guess my ass. Every opening I had on me was bloody, and that was from concussion. And I remember getting on a helicopter, and eight of my men were on there, shot all to pieces, and the damn blood was flowing out of this bottom of the Huey there. I mean, it was literally running on the damn floor. And they got us back to the battalion aid station, back to the hospital, whatever, and got the men off, and I never saw them again. Never saw any of them again. I don't know, to this day, I don't know how many of them lived or how many of them died. And I can't remember their names. I don't remember any of them's names. Anybody in my platoon, I can't remember their names. And I've been told that by Army psychiatrists and others that I've just mentally got them blocked out. But that was the worst. That was the worst I ever saw. They shot the shit out of us.
Is that where you earned your Purple Heart?
Huh?
Is that where you earned your Purple Heart?
That was where I earned one of them. The first one, hell, I'd earned one. I earned one of them way before then on the first operation I went out on. We had been on ambush patrol for about 3 days or so, and coming back in, and there was this little trail here, and we were supposed to meet the helicopters up there about maybe a couple of 100 meters in front of us. And so I told the platoon to stop. I was going to check something out, and I went forward. And I should have known better to walk on that trail, but I did walk on it. And so I came back and told the men to come on, let's go. And of course my radio operator walked within a foot or two right behind me. And we were going forward, and all of a sudden I heard this damn click, just kick like that. And it blew both of us about 10 feet up in the air, I guess. I don't know. It blew that boy. He had tripped a booby trap that I had walked over 3 times, and I didn't trip it, and he tripped it. And it was like shooting him. It would have been like shooting him with a 10 gauge shotgun from the back. He carried a PRC 25 radio on his back, and that came down to just about your hips. And from there down, his legs were shot all to pieces. It cut 2 of his femoral arteries, 1 in each leg, because I was holding them with I dropped down, and it got me too, but I didn't know it at the time. It just looked like he'd stuck a pig. I mean, by that time he was just laying in a small lake of blood. It wasn't a puddle. You don't realize how much blood's in a human being. And everything below that radio was just shot all to pieces. For instance, he had an Army flashlight in his side pocket of his fatigues. And after it was all over with, I picked that flashlight up, and there were 7 holes, 7 shrapnel holes right just through that flashlight. And he had all the rest of them through his legs. His legs were shot all to pieces. But I remember holding those femoral arteries until we got him on the helicopter. And I don't know if he lived or died. And I can't remember his name. I just don't remember. And last time we saw him was going out. And then I reported, we had a place where we got into the little company area there. And I sat down and was giving a report to the company commander. He said, "Lieutenant Stricklen, you're bleeding." And I looked down and the blood was running off of my left arm, off all 4 of my fingers. And I had taken a piece of shrapnel through my left arm up above my elbow, about 3 or 4 inches above my elbow. A piece of shrapnel had gone all the way through my arm and took the meat and the hide and everything out with it. And I was bleeding like a damn stuck hog. That was first one I got. Then I got another one when in that fight, in that ambush fight. Then I got another one just in general fights. I got hit 4 times, once in each side of the neck and once in each arm. But after I got the second Purple Heart, I never even put in for any more. So I figured I was going to get killed anyway. So I didn't bother. Shit. Just, you don't know, you don't figure you're going to make it. You figure you ain't going to make it. But I did.
How was your experience with being in an S4 for the military?
Oh, S4, I got some good stories about that and some bad. S4 was a supply officer. And I was, it's supposed to be at a battalion level, the S4 should be at least a captain or a major sometimes. Well, they got one underneath that as a support platoon leader. So they made me the support platoon leader. This was before I was in Vietnam as much. Well, I was S4 when we first got to Vietnam. And so I really became the S4 because the S4 we had wasn't worth a damn. And so we had to supply the troops. You had to feed them. You had to keep food coming to them, ammunition. Well, in Vietnam, that meant on those helicopters all the time. So we were always hauling ammunition out to them and food mostly for the different spots that they were in. And it was quite a busy job. I mean, it was a hell of a job. The supply officer, you only got one per battalion. See, so we were taking hot meals out to them and taking ammunition and whatever else they had to have for supplies. And I served at that for several months and then got transferred to a line. Everybody served on the line, so to speak. Although there wasn't actually a line like in World War II. I mean, it was ambush patrols, but you were in combat. Yeah. So I served as a supply officer, a rifle platoon leader, and a PX officer during the time.
What was your experience as a PX officer? I'm guessing that was your last year.
Yeah, that was my last month. Well, we actually built the PX for the 9th Infantry. They didn't have a PX, and we got orders to build one, and they had the plans for us and everything like that, and gave us the materials. I supervised the building of it. The engineers really did it, but I was a PX officer under Major Scholes. I was the actual PX officer, and that was easy duty. I mean, it was like a storekeeper. Had nothing to that, and they let me do that the last couple of months I was there because I'd been on the line for so long, and so, that was easy. I mean, I thought about it one time staying in the service, but I didn't stay in. I figured if I could survive Vietnam, that was enough. Yeah.
So when did you come home?
I think it was November of 1968, and your grandfather met me, Aunt Margaret, Uncle Martin, and my mother. I came into Tampa. That was the funny part. When we left Vietnam, of course, it was probably 100 degrees. It was hotter than the devil over there. Well, of course, this was in November, which, if I recall right, is the dry season over there, and it's hotter than hell. Well, we went from there to Anchorage, Alaska. Well, we'd been in Vietnam for a year. Of course, we were all acclimatized and used to hot weather and stuff. And most of us didn't have heavy uniforms. All we had was, or at best, all you had was your dress uniform. And most of us didn't even have that till we got back to the States. And here we are coming out of 100-degree weather going into down Anchorage, Alaska in November. And it was like, I don't know actually how cold it was, but it had to be below zero. And we damn, they said, we can get off the airplane. Well, we got off the airplane for a minute while it refueled. We ran into this little old hut. And damn, they had the heat on and everything else. We were all still about to freeze. Then we went back to, flew all the way back from there, from Vietnam to Anchorage, Alaska. We landed. Then we flew down to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and that was when we got out. Then, yeah.
How was what did you do after you left the military?
Well, I took a vacation for about a month or two. Went down to Fort Pierce and fished and laid around and drank. Then I went back to the University of Florida. I always swore, while I was over there, if I made it out of there alive, I would go back and finish up my education at the University of Florida. I only had like less than a year to go. But I didn't have the grades. I had very poor grades. So when I got back, I went back to the University of Florida and went up to the agricultural school where I went to the ag department, and talked to the head of the department, Dr. Cresdorn. I said, Doc, if y'all let me back in, I think I could probably make it this time. He said, well, let's go talk to Dr. Brooker. He was the dean of agriculture. And they liked veterans. The ag school was not part of the demonstrations and all that crap that the hippies and all were doing. So Dr. Brooker said, Mr. Stricklen, he said, we think you served your country. We think you deserve another chance at the university. So anyway, he said, we're going to pick all the courses. He said, you can pick one course, and we're going to pick everything else. That's fine. So I picked a citrus course, and them rascals picked every course I had flunked. Physics, algebra, genetics. Well, I wound up making straight A's, except I did make a B in genetics. And I never made another grade less than an A in my college career. But I finished up in about a year's time, or a little bit less than a year's time. And I was getting ready to graduate. Well, my overall grade average was like a 2.00000002. I mean, just that's how close it was. And Dr. Cresdorn asked me, he said, Strick, he said, would you like to go to graduate school? And I laughed, and I said, because they liked veterans. They treated us different. I said, hell, Doc, I said, you know what my grade average is. You had to have something like I don't remember, a 3.1 or 2 or something like that to get into graduate school. I said, there's no way in hell my grades would ever be good enough to get in graduate school. And he said, well, let's go talk to Dr. Brooker. So we went down there, and he said, Mr. Stricklen, he said, I see you've done rather well since you got out of the service. I said, yeah. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, we need a graduate assistant in the citrus department. He said, I think that given your service to the country, we can overlook all these grades that you made before you went into service and just count the ones you got after the service. And he said, you got a 3.95. He said, if you'll go take the GRE, graduate record examination, he said, if you do all right on that, he said, I think we can find you a place. That'll be work. Well, I was making $130 a month on the GI Bill, which was as much as you could get. And he said, we'll pay you $270 a month as a graduate assistant. Oh, hell, that was $400 a month in 1968, latter part of 68 and 69. That was big bucks for a single man. So, hell yes, I'll do it. So I stayed up there, and that's how I wound up getting a master's degree.
Did you follow the war when you were home?
Hell no. I know what was going on over there. I didn't screw that place. I don't like. No, I didn't follow the war.
Did you suffer any PTSD?
Absolutely, I did. I became a very virulent alcoholic. I had drunk some